Hello, and welcome to my second attempt at recording this, which is meant to be a short recording as a test run for the podcast I'm planning on doing, which I'm provisionally calling Apocalypse Follies. My name is AJ McKenna, and the normal focus for this podcast is going to be riffing on a particular text, usually. So I have some ideas for films or books and themes that I'm going to look at, but because the idea with this recording is that it's supposed to be really not much longer than 5 minutes, being a test, I am going to use one of my own works. This is not something I'm going to do. I'm not doing this purely for reasons of ego gratification. Not purely for reasons of ego gratification, obviously. That's a little bit of it. No one does anything without that, at least partly, in their mind. But normally I'm going to be riffing on texts written by other people because I usually find stuff written by other people more interesting than my own stuff in terms of actually talking about it. This is, I hope, not selling my own stuff short. I just, I try to put as much as I can in the work, and it's for other people to draw things out. But for this particular episode, I'm going to do the opposite. So I'm going to do a poem that I wrote recently, and I'm going to talk about it for a little while. So the poem, I wrote this on the day of the inauguration of Joseph Biden. I don't want to come off as massively pro-Biden, but here's the thing. Having spent the previous 4 years worried that the man that the Americans like to pretend is not technically their king was mad, and I know I might be making Americans slightly mad by this monarchist illusion, but consider this. Elaine Scarry, the author of The Body in Pain, has a book out recently called Thermonuclear Monarchy, in which she argues, I think quite rightly, that the President of the United States is effectively a monarchical figure because he has the power to end life on Earth. He or she, if they ever manage to elect a woman, it's just pure bad luck that the examples they've had so far have not exactly been the most inspiring. He or she has the power to press the nuclear button, initiate a nuclear exchange, and, as we all know by now, wipe out life on Earth many, many times over. And I don't think that's good. It's interesting. It's interesting that when you think about it, we went from being societies that used to believe in a divine right of kings. We used to believe that God had ultimate power over the universe, and he devolved that power onto the king, onto the monarch. And of course, we no longer believe this. America is meant to be a country that doesn't have a king, and yet they have created, ironically, a situation in which their leader, their ruler, fundamentally has the powers of a god. If you believe, if you go with the old serial killer idea, if one does as God does, then one becomes as God is, then President of the United States is probably the nearest thing to God we have in the modern world. And that God was mad for a good few years. Not that there haven't been mad gods before, and I'm speaking specifically in terms of the Oval Office here. Reagan, Bush Jr., Biden, a different form of madness there, maybe spend a little time listening to Everywhere at the End of Time for a sneak preview of the Biden madness, but at least that's not quite as bad as the Trump madness. And this poem is a kind of howl of freedom, really, at the knowledge that we weren't going to have to deal with that guy as president, at least another 4 years. It's called His Favorite Movie Was Not Citizen Kane. And will you watch Bloodsport on Air Force One now the strains of My Way have died down? Will some flunky fast forward the boring bits so you can cut to Van Damme doing the splits and punching that big Chinese dude in the nuts? Will you tell yourself this is what you have done with your sniping at China? That you have become an American ninja, a Kumite king, a heavyweight champion Lord of the Ring, like the man Van Damme played, the white ninja, Frank Dux, who put on a cheap gi and made it all up, who paid for the trophy he said that he won, with a face straight as yours when you bragged about grabbing the pussies of bitches you moved on at pageants. What is it with boys like you? Desperate to come off as what you think men are? Was Daddy that bad? Were you so poorly served by the role models you had that you think we respect you, you ludicrous goon? Well, I never did. And I'm glad that you're gone. And I hope they fumigate Air Force One. Now, part of the point of this recording is to generate problems that can be looked at and that I can learn how to fix in the next session of the podcasting workshop that I'm going to about this, and one has just occurred to me. So what I'm going to do now is walk away from the mic while talking, see how easily it picks things up while I'm walking away, and turn down the fan in my hall, which has probably been interfering with the sound for a while, and now I'm back. It's going to be interesting to hear how that sounds. So yeah, I knew I was going to write something on the day of the inauguration because I was going to a workshop that day, and the idea was that we were going to do live acrostic stuff about the inauguration of Biden. This didn't really happen, but I wrote his favourite film was not Citizen Kane while I was warming up for that, and I wasn't... Let me be clear. I did not like Trump, and I'd known for a while that his favourite film was Bloodsport. He claimed, as the title alludes to, that his favourite film was Citizen Kane, but if you actually look at films that we know he reacted emotionally to very strongly, that he praised, that he could talk about for a long period of time, Bloodsport is the one, not Citizen Kane. So this was something that I was aware of, but what I was not aware of was that Bloodsport is based on a fake martial artist. Frank Dux, the guy that Bloodsport is based on, lied about the tournament he'd been in. He lied about all the Chinese dudes he'd punched in the dick. You know, he was making the whole thing up. And that, to me, just suddenly felt like a gift. You know, it suddenly explained everything about the previous 4 years. It explained everything about Trump. This fake machismo. The idea that his favourite film, of course his favourite film is a martial arts film, but that it's a film about a fake martial artist. A guy who lied about being good at beating people up. And somehow that's perfect for Trump. And I think there's also something perfect about the fact that Bloodsport is a Van Damme film. You know, you would expect that Trump would... Just taking a drink of water there to create another problem to discuss in the session. And to hydrate, very important to do that. You'd think that really Trump would prefer a Steven Seagal film, because Trump and Seagal, they're kind of similar, you know? I mean, Seagal, a man rumoured to possess sex slaves, whose main oeuvre lately seems to be defined by the fact that he will make any film that he's hired for as long as it gives him not less than 80% of his screen time sitting in a chair. And a man who, again, seems to not be nearly as puissant with the old fisticuffs as he'd like us to believe, you know. There are stories about Seagal getting choked out by a judo guy to the point where he shat his pants. There are stories about him having his wrist nearly broken in an airport departure lounge by the American wrestler Kurt Hennig when Seagal decided to try and show off a little bit to some of his pals. But you see, that's the thing. Seagal is manifestly, physically not perfect. He does resemble the real Trump in a lot of ways, physically. But Trump could never allow his avatar in a film to look like Steven Seagal, even the early Steven Seagal. But Van Damme, now we're talking. That's the kind of guy that Trump would see himself as. That's the kind of fetish object that is going to appeal to the narcissist. And that, I think, is why Trump's favourite movie was Bloodsport and not Citizen Kane. And that about wraps it up for this little test. If you want to come back and listen to some of the longer episodes of this that I've got planned, we're going to be looking initially, at least in the first episodes, at the idea of an alternative England, and we're going to be looking at various texts in that line of things. The film Penda's Fen, directed by Alan Clark and written by David Rudkin, the recent Repeater Press book, The English Heretic Collection, which I think everyone should read, not least because there's stuff in there that really does open up a few things about the history of this country from a radical standpoint, and we'll talk about that in the episode on it, and various other texts. I'm leery of saying this will all be dealt with in one episode. All my other little test runs so far, where I've tried to record things about this going longer, have taken way longer than I've expected, so I think those may take a few more episodes, but as I say, that is something that's for the future right now. In the meantime, if you'd like to see more of my stuff, I have a YouTube channel. If you search AJ McKenna on YouTube, you will find some poems written by a pale, fat trans poet, and some stuff about the career of an American college football star. I'm not the college football star. Hint. You can check me out on Twitter at Anathema Jane. My new album, Jolie Laird, is out at Bandcamp at the minute. Again, if you search AJ McKenna Bandcamp, that will find you that. And my most recent book, England is the Enemy, is available on Kindle. So give that a look sometime. And in the meantime, hope to be seeing you soon again for a longer episode of these. And remember, there's no need to worry. It is the end of the world.